Greetings and salutations. Welcome to No Harry. We are thrilled to present today's story, What If Luna Lovegood Could See Alternate Timelines and Showed Harry the One Where Hermione Becomes Dark Lady. If these stories bring joy to your day, please consider liking and subscribing. Every bit of support helps us continue this passion project. Now, prepare yourself for an amazing tale. Chapter 1, The glimpse beyond the sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the Hogwarts library, casting long shadows across ancient tomes and worn wooden tables. Luna Lovegood sat alone in the corner, her pale blonde hair almost translucent in the afternoon glow. She wasn't reading the book open before her, instead, her large silvery eyes had gone unfocused, staring at something beyond the physical realm. It had been happening more frequently since her 16th birthday, these strange episodes where reality seemed to split and fragment, showing her glimpses of paths not taken. At first, she dismissed them as daydreams or perhaps the influence of Raxperts. But there was something too consistent, too coherent about these visions. Luna blinked as the library around her shifted. The shelves remained, but the students changed. Different robes. Different faces. Different books. And there, at the central table, sat Hermione Granger, but not the Hermione she knew. This Hermione wore black robes with intricate silver embroidery along the edges. Her wild hair was pulled back in a severe style that emphasized the cold calculation in her eyes. A small group of students surrounded her, deferential and afraid. One boy approached with a trembling hand, offering a scroll. "Is this what you requested, my lady?" His voice wavered. Hermione, this other Hermione, glanced at the scroll with casual disdain. "You were instructed to bring me Flamel's third thesis on transmutation. This is merely his published commentary." Her voice carried the same precise articulation Luna recognized, but lacked any warmth. "Your carelessness costs us time we cannot afford." The boy paled. "I'll find it immediately, no need." Hermione raised her wand, an elegant ebony creation Luna had never seen before. "I'll simply extract the knowledge of where it's located." The boy's eyes widened in terror. "Please, my lady, not the memory extraction again, memoriae extraho." Luna gasped as silver wisps began pulling from the boy's temples while he shuddered in pain. The Hermione she knew would never use such invasive magic on another student. As the vision began to fade, Luna caught a glimpse of something on Hermione's forearm where her sleeve had slipped, not a dark mark, but something equally disturbing, a sigil of a phoenix consumed by flames, surrounded by ancient runes. The library snapped back to normal. Luna blinked rapidly, her heart racing. This wasn't like her other glimpses, which typically showed minor variations, different house placements, alternative friendships, small divergences in the timeline. This was something profound and terrifying. "Luna? Are you all right?" Harry Potter stood beside her table, green eyes concerned behind his round glasses. His presence was a welcome anchor to reality. "Oh, hello, Harry Potter," Luna said, keeping her voice deliberately light. "I'm quite well. Just watching the pathways diverge." Harry set his bag down with a sigh. "Another riddle? I've never been good at those." Luna tilted her head, studying him with newfound intensity. She'd always found Harry easy to talk to, his mind wasn't cluttered with preconceptions like so many others. Perhaps he would understand what was happening to her. Perhaps he needed to know. "What if I told you I can see things that didn't happen, but could have?" she asked. Harry smiled uncertainly. "Well, that sounds like divination, which we know I'm rubbish at." "Not the future," Luna clarified. "Other presents. Different nows that grew from different choices." Harry's smile faltered as he recognized the seriousness behind her dreamy exterior. "You mean like, alternate realities?" Luna nodded, pleased he'd grasped it so quickly. "Precisely like alternate realities. I've been seeing them since my birthday. At first, they were small glimpses, you being sorted into Slytherin, Ron becoming a prefect instead of you, Professor Lupin staying at Hogwarts. But today. She hesitated. Harry took the seat across from her, his curiosity piqued. What did you see today, Luna? I saw Hermione, Luna whispered. But not our Hermione. What do you mean, not our Hermione? Luna's silver eyes met his green ones. I saw a Hermione who became something terrible. Something worse than Voldemort. Harry jerked back as if she'd slapped him. That's not funny, Luna. I wasn't attempting humor, Luna replied calmly. I saw a timeline where Hermione Granger became a dark lady of extraordinary power and cruelty. Harry shook his head emphatically. That's impossible. Hermione is the most ethical person I know. She knits hats for house elves, for Merlin's sake. Yes, our Hermione does, Luna agreed. But in another branch of time, something changed her. Something fundamental. Harry's expression hardened. I don't believe it. Luna shrugged. That's reasonable. I wouldn't believe it either, if I hadn't seen it. But I could show you. Show me. How? Luna closed her eyes briefly. Her father had warned her about sharing gifts too openly, but this felt important, necessary, even. I can bring others into the glimpses with me. I've done it with Daddy when I showed him the timeline where Mum never died. It's a bit like legilimency, but instead of entering your mind, I'm bringing a part of you into, elsewhere. Harry looked around the library nervously. I don't think we should do that here. No, Luna agreed. Not here. Meet me tonight by the room of requirement. Midnight would be best, fewer Raxperts about. Harry hesitated, clearly torn between skepticism and curiosity. Luna, this is Hermione we're talking about. My best friend. I know, Luna said softly. That's why you need to see. The 7th floor corridor was silent at midnight, the only illumination coming from the soft glow of Harry's wand. He debated whether to come at all, but curiosity had won out. Part of him, a large part, was certain Luna was simply experiencing vivid daydreams, but another part remembered all the times her odd pronouncements had contained truths others missed. Luna was already there, sitting cross-legged on the stone floor beside the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. She wasn't wearing her school robes, but instead a flowing blue dress that seemed to shimmer slightly in the wand light. You came, she said, not sounding particularly surprised. I'm still not convinced this isn't just some elaborate prank, Harry said, lowering himself to sit opposite her. Luna's expression remained serene. That would be quite uncharacteristic of me, wouldn't it? Harry had to concede the point. Luna was many things, eccentric, blunt, occasionally uncomfortable to be around, but she wasn't a prankster. Fair enough. So how does this work? Do we need the room of requirement? No, we just needed somewhere quiet where we wouldn't be disturbed, Luna explained. The process itself is rather simple. We'll be sitting right here the entire time, though our awareness will be elsewhere. She extended her hands, palms up. You'll need to take my hands and look into my eyes. Try to keep your mind open, resistance makes the transition more jarring. Harry reluctantly placed his hands in hers, surprised at how warm they were. Luna's silvery eyes locked with his, and he suddenly felt uncomfortably exposed. I'll start with something small, Luna murmured. A glimpse you can verify. Harry opened his mouth to ask what she meant, but the corridor around them suddenly blurred. When his vision cleared, they were still sitting across from each other, but now in the Gryffindor common room. Harry looked around in shock. The room was familiar yet subtly different, some of the furniture was arranged differently, and the bulletin board displayed notices from what appeared to be the previous term. This is from last year, Luna explained, though her lips didn't move. Her voice seemed to echo directly in his mind. Watch. The portrait hole opened, and Harry saw himself enter, but a slightly younger version wearing formal dress robes, his face flushed with anger. Behind him came Ron and Hermione, also in formal wear, clearly in the middle of a heated argument. Completely ruined everything, Memory Hermione was saying, her voice shrill. Memory Ron's face was as red as his hair. He's from Durmstrang. You're fraternizing with the enemy. Memory Harry looked desperately uncomfortable as Memory Hermione rounded on Memory Ron. The enemy? The enemy? Who was it wanting his autograph? The enemy, honestly. I can't believe you. The scene dissolved, and Harry found himself back in the 7th-floor corridor, gasping as if he'd been underwater. Luna's hand still held his, her expression patient. That was after the Yule Ball, Harry said. When Ron and Hermione fought about Krum. Luna nodded. Yes, but you weren't there for that part of the conversation. You'd gone up ahead to the dormitory to avoid their bickering. In this timeline, you stayed with them instead. Harry's mind reeled. The scene had felt completely real, not like a pensive memory, which had an ethereal quality, but solid and present, as if he'd been physically transported back in time. That could have been a lucky guess, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Would you like another example? Luna asked. Perhaps something more personal. Before Harry could respond, the corridor blurred again. This time they materialized in a small, immaculately clean kitchen. Harry recognized it immediately as number 4, Privet Drive. A much younger version of himself, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, was standing on a step stool at the counter, carefully flipping bacon while Aunt Petunia watched with pursed lips. Don't you dare burn it, she warned. Vernon has an important meeting today. Yes, Aunt Petunia, little Harry replied dutifully. The scene shifted slightly. Now little Harry was serving breakfast to the Dursleys, carefully placing the perfectly cooked bacon on Uncle Vernon's plate first. I suppose that's adequate, Vernon grunted, examining the food critically. Little Harry's face lit up at what was, for Vernon Dursley, practically effusive praise. Thank you, Uncle Vernon. I practiced the way you showed me. The present Harry felt a pang of recognition. This exact morning had featured in his thoughts during his first occlumency lesson with Snape, a memory he was certain no one else at Hogwarts could possibly know about. The corridor rematerialized around them, and Harry pulled his hands away from Luna's, shaken. How did you? I didn't, Luna said simply. I didn't choose that memory specifically. The glimpses show me branches of possibility, moments where timelines diverge. In one timeline, you received that grudging praise from your uncle. In another, perhaps the bacon burned, and the morning went differently. Harry rubbed his temples, trying to process what he was experiencing. And you're saying you've seen a timeline where Hermione becomes evil? Not merely evil, Luna corrected. There are timelines where Hermione makes poor choices, where she misuses her brilliance. But the one I glimpsed yesterday was different. She wasn't just misguided, she was transformed. A dark lady of terrible purpose and power. Harry wanted to dismiss it outright, but the evidence of Luna's ability was becoming difficult to ignore. Show me, he said finally. Show me this dark Hermione. Luna's expression turned solemn. It won't be pleasant. And it might change how you see her. I need to know, Harry insisted. If there's even a chance, very well. Luna extended her hands again. Remember, this is not our Hermione. Not yet, and perhaps never. Harry took her hands and steeled himself. The corridor dissolved more slowly this time, colors and shapes swirling like paint in water before resolving into a scene of devastation. They stood in what had once been the Great Hall of Hogwarts. The enchanted ceiling still showed a night sky, but it was distorted, streaks of unnatural purple light cutting across the stars. The house tables were gone, replaced by a single massive table of black stone on a raised dais. Behind it, where the staff table once stood, was a throne-like chair carved with runes that seemed to writhe and shift when Harry tried to focus on them. This is Hogwarts 5 years from now, Luna's voice explained in his mind. Or rather, 5 years from now in this particular timeline. The great doors at the end of the hall burst open. A group of wizards and witches in battle robes stormed in, led by an older Neville Longbottom. His face was scarred, his expression hardened by years of conflict. Behind him came Luna herself, looking gaunt and severe, alongside Dean Thomas and Seamus Finnegan. "Find it," Timeline Neville ordered. "The chronosphere has to be here somewhere. We won't get another chance at this." "What if it's protected?" Timeline Dean asked, scanning the hall warily. "It will be," Timeline Luna said in a voice utterly unlike her dreamy present-day tone. She wouldn't leave her most valuable artifact undefended. A cold laugh echoed through the hall, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. The resistance fighters formed a defensive circle, wands raised. "Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate this?" The voice was cultured, precise, and chillingly familiar. "The moment you crossed the wards, I knew." "Really, Neville, I expected better strategic thinking from you." A figure materialized before the black stone throne. Hermione Granger, but transformed almost beyond recognition. Her brown hair was streaked with premature silver, pulled back in an elegant knot. Her face had lost all its softness, cheekbones sharp and prominent, eyes cold and calculating. She wore formal robes of deep purple, embroidered with silver symbols along the edges. At her throat gleamed a pendant containing what looked like a miniature galaxy. Harry felt ill. This couldn't be Hermione, and yet, looking at her face, he could see his friend underneath the cold mask. "Hermione," Timeline Neville said, his wand unwavering. "It doesn't have to end this way. You can still stop this." Dark Lady Hermione's lips curved in a pitying smile. "Oh, Neville. Always the optimist. Even after I reformed the ministry, even after I established the magical meritocracy, even after I began the Great Separation, you still believe I can be reasoned with." She sighed. "I suppose that's why I've allowed your little resistance to continue for so long. You remind me of simpler times." "You've gone too far," Timeline Luna said. "The separation of magical children from their muggle families is necessary," Hermione cut in sharply. "How many magical children suffer in ignorance? How many are abused by fearful muggle relatives?" Her eyes flicked briefly to where Harry and present Luna invisibly observed, as though she could somehow sense them. "The old ways were built on sentiment and tradition, not logic. My way protects our kind." "By creating a surveillance state?" Neville challenged. "By using those modified time-turners to predict and prevent any opposition?" "That's not protection, Hermione. That's control." Hermione's expression hardened. "Control is precisely what the magical world has always lacked. Dumbledore controlled through manipulation and half-truths. Voldemort controlled through fear and pain. I control through knowledge and reason." "And those who resist your reason," Timeline Luna asked softly. "Are given every opportunity to understand," Hermione replied. "Only those who persist in fighting against progress face consequences." Timeline Neville's grip tightened on his wand. Like Harry? Was his re-education an opportunity to understand? For the first time, something like genuine emotion flickered across Dark Lady Hermione's face, a flash of pain quickly suppressed. "Harry made his choice." "No," Timeline Neville said. "You took his choice from him when you modified his memories." "I protected him," Hermione snapped, her composure cracking. "You have no idea what would have happened if," she stopped abruptly, regaining control. "Enough. This conversation is pointless. Tempus immobilis." The resistance fighters froze in place, caught mid-motion. Only Timeline Luna managed to partially deflect the spell, her left arm still free, though she couldn't raise her wand effectively. Hermione descended from the dais, moving with eerie grace. She approached Timeline Luna, studying her with detached curiosity. "You always were surprisingly resistant to temporal magic. Something about your perception, I suspect. In another life, we might have researched it together." "In another life," Timeline Luna managed to say, "you remained our friend instead of our jailer." Hermione's expression didn't change, but her eyes darkened. "I outgrew friendship when I outgrew illusions. Sentiment is the enemy of necessary action. No, timeline, Luna whispered. Sentiment, love, is what Harry tried to remind you of. Before you took that from him too. The scene wavered and began to dissolve, but not before Harry caught a glimpse of dark Lady Hermione's face contorting with a mixture of rage and something that looked suspiciously like grief. Back in the corridor, Harry yanked his hands from Luna's grasp, breathing heavily. That's not, she wouldn't, not our Hermione, Luna reminded him gently. But a Hermione who took a different path. What happened to me in that timeline? Harry asked, dreading the answer. They mentioned something about memory modification. Luna's silver eyes clouded. I've only seen fragments. In that timeline, you opposed her when she first began implementing her magical meritocracy. You were one of the few people she couldn't bring herself to harm directly, so instead she altered your perception. Made you forget why you opposed her methods. Harry felt sick. That's worse than the Imperius curse. Yes, Luna agreed simply. But what changed her? How did she go from my Hermione to that? Luna closed her eyes briefly. There seemed to be several critical moments where the timelines diverge. Would you like to see one? Harry wasn't sure he did, but he nodded anyway. He needed to understand. This time when the corridor dissolved, they appeared in the Hogwarts library. Hermione sat alone at a table piled high with books, looking much as she did now, perhaps a year older. She was reading an ancient tome bound in dark leather, her face illuminated by wandlight as she worked late into the night. This is during your 7th year, Luna's voice explained. After Voldemort's defeat. Harry watched as Hermione suddenly sat up straight, her eyes widening as she read something in the ancient book. She glanced around furtively, then cast a quick spell Harry didn't recognize over the page. The text seemed to shimmer and reveal hidden writing beneath. Extraordinary, Hermione whispered to herself. If Dumbledore knew this was possible. She carefully copied something into a separate notebook, her quill moving rapidly across the page. When she finished, she closed the ancient tome and performed an intricate wand movement over it. Nulla vestigium, she murmured, and the book briefly glowed before returning to normal. The scene shifted forward in time. Now they were in an abandoned classroom. Hermione stood before a complex magical diagram drawn on the floor in what looked disturbingly like blood. She held her wand in one hand and a small, golden object in the other. The resurrection of knowledge lost is not forbidden, she recited, as if reading from an invisible text. The boundaries between knowing and not knowing are arbitrary constructs. The golden object began to glow. I seek the wisdom of Ravenclaw's forgotten archive. I offer equivalent exchange. A pulse of magic surged through the room, and Hermione gasped as the golden object dissolved into her palm, leaving a small, star-shaped scar. Her eyes briefly glowed with the same golden light. It worked, she breathed, looking simultaneously exhilarated and frightened. I can see it all, the connections, the patterns, the scene dissolved, returning them to the corridor once more. Harry sat in stunned silence for several moments, processing what he'd seen. What was that ritual, he finally asked. Something forbidden, Luna said quietly. A method of accessing knowledge that Rowena Ravenclaw deemed too dangerous to preserve openly. In most timelines, Hermione either never finds that book, or chooses not to use the ritual after discovering it. And in the dark timeline, this is what starts her down that path. Some knowledge ritual? Luna tilted her head thoughtfully. It's one of the divergence points. The ritual itself isn't inherently dark, but it changes how she perceives magic and power. It makes her see possibilities that others miss. In most timelines, she has you and Ron and others to ground her when she discovers new magic. In that timeline, something separates you first. Harry ran a hand through his already messy hair. This is insane. Hermione is the most ethical person I know. She wouldn't, anyone can fall, Luna said, her dreamy voice taking on an unusual intensity. Anyone can be corrupted by power and isolation. Even Dumbledore admitted he couldn't be trusted with the Deathly Hallows. Hermione's brilliance is her greatest strength, but without moral anchors, without friends who challenge her, it could become something else. Harry felt a chill at Luna's words. He remembered Hermione's ruthless efficiency when she believed in a cause, the Jinx DA list, keeping Rita Skeeter in a jar, even suggesting memory charms on her own parents to protect them. Always for good reasons, always with noble intentions, but there was an unsettling pragmatism to her methods sometimes. "Have you shown anyone else these glimpses?" he asked. Luna shook her head. "Only you. And my father, once, but he didn't fully understand what he was seeing. I thought you needed to know, because in nearly all the timelines where Hermione doesn't fall, you're the constant factor. Your friendship keeps her grounded." Harry stood up abruptly, pacing the corridor. "I need to process this. It's a lot." "Of course," Luna said, rising gracefully. "But there's one more thing you should see. One more glimpse that might help you understand." Harry hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "All right. One more." This time when the corridor faded, they found themselves in the Gryffindor common room. It was empty save for Hermione, who sat curled in an armchair by the fire, crying quietly. She looked to be about 16, their current age. "What happened here?" Harry asked mentally. "Watch," Luna's voice replied. The portrait hole opened, and an exhausted-looking Harry entered. In this timeline, he seemed different somehow, harder, more closed off. He spotted Hermione and froze, clearly considering retreating. "Harry," timeline Hermione said, quickly wiping her tears. "I wasn't expecting anyone back yet." Timeline Harry hesitated, then approached warily. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said automatically, then sighed. "No, I'm not. I got a letter from home. My parents are splitting up." Timeline Harry's expression remained carefully neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." An awkward silence fell between them. Clearly, in this timeline, their friendship had suffered some kind of breach. "Would you sit with me? Just for a little while?" Hermione asked, her voice small. Timeline Harry checked his watch. "I can't. I'm meeting someone." Hurt flashed across Hermione's face, quickly masked. "Of course. Don't let me keep you." Timeline Harry turned to leave, then paused at the portrait hole. "For what it's worth, I am sorry about your parents." After he departed, Hermione sat alone, staring into the fire. "It's all right," she whispered to the empty room. "I don't need anyone. I'll be stronger on my own." She pulled out a small, familiar book, the same notebook present Harry had seen her writing in during the previous vision. Opening it, she traced the diagrams inside with a determined expression. "Knowledge is the only reliable ally," she murmured to herself. "Everything else is temporary." The scene faded, and Harry found himself back in the corridor, his heart heavy. Luna was watching him with those unervingly perceptive silver eyes. In that timeline, she explained softly, "You and Hermione had a falling out over something that seemed important at the time but was ultimately trivial. By the time you both realized it, too much had been said, too many bridges burned." Without your friendship to anchor her, she turned increasingly to knowledge as a substitute for human connection. Harry leaned against the wall, feeling drained. "So you're saying I need to, what? Watch Hermione for signs she's turning into a dark lady?" Luna shook her head. "No. I'm saying friendship matters more than you know. I'm saying Hermione Granger has the potential for extraordinary greatness or terrible darkness, and the people around her, especially you, influence which path she takes." "Why me specifically?" "Because you accept her as she is," Luna said simply. "Ron challenges her, which she needs, but he also makes her feel judged sometimes. You let her be brilliant without making her feel different. In the timelines where she doesn't fall, that acceptance keeps her connected to her humanity. Harry pushed his glasses up his nose, a nervous habit. This is a lot of pressure to put on me, Luna. I know, she acknowledged. But I thought you should see the possibility. Knowledge of alternate paths can help us navigate our own. Harry considered her words carefully. Have you seen other futures for the rest of us? For me? A small, enigmatic smile curved Luna's lips. Many. Some wonderful, some terrible. But I've learned it's best not to share too much. Knowing too many possible futures can paralyze a person with indecision. Then why show me Hermione's dark path? Because it's not yet certain, Luna said. And because you have the strongest influence over whether it manifests. She paused, her expression growing distant. There's something coming, Harry. Something that will test Hermione's principles against her pragmatism. When that moment comes, your friendship may be the only thing that prevents her from taking the first step down that dark road. The torches in the corridor flickered, casting strange shadows across Luna's face. For a moment, she looked much older, weighted with knowledge no teenager should possess. I should get back, Harry said, suddenly uncomfortable. It's late. Luna nodded. Of course. Thank you for trusting me enough to look. As Harry turned to leave, she called after him softly. Harry. Remember that what I showed you isn't destiny. It's just possibility. Our Hermione is still our Hermione. Harry nodded, but as he made his way back to Gryffindor Tower under his invisibility cloak, he couldn't shake the image of Hermione's face transformed by power and isolation into something cold and calculating. Nor could he forget her words, sentiment is the enemy of necessary action. He slipped through the portrait hole to find the common room deserted except for a single figure curled up in an armchair by the dying fire, surrounded by books. Hermione looked up, startled, as he removed his cloak. Harry. It's past midnight, she whispered. Where have you been? For a disorienting moment, the scene overlapped with the vision Luna had shown him, Hermione alone by the fire, turning to forbidden knowledge for comfort. He shook his head to clear it. Couldn't sleep, he said, which wasn't technically a lie. What about you? Don't tell me you're still studying. Hermione smiled ruefully, holding up a book. Actually, no. I'm reading a novel my mum sent. Sometimes I need to remind myself there's more to life than academics. The simple statement flooded Harry with relief. This was his Hermione, brilliant but self-aware, capable of recognizing her own tendencies and countering them. Mind if I join you for a bit? He asked, dropping into the chair opposite her. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by pleasure. Of course not. Everything all right? Harry hesitated, wondering how much, if anything, he should share about Luna's revelations. Just thinking about choices, he said finally. And how lucky I am to have friends who keep me on the right path. Hermione's eyes softened. That goes both ways, you know. I don't know what I'd do without you and Ron keeping me balanced. The echo of Luna's words sent a chill down Harry's spine. He smiled through it, making a silent promise to himself, and to the friend sitting across from him, that he would never let her face her demons alone. We should get some sleep, Hermione said eventually, closing her book. Class is tomorrow. As they climbed the stairs toward their respective dormitories, Harry made an impulsive decision. Hermione? She turned. Yes. If you ever find something magical that seems too good to be true, or knowledge that seems too powerful, promise you'll talk to me before doing anything with it. Hermione's brow furrowed in confusion. That's an odd request. Has something happened? Just promise me, Harry said, more urgently than he intended. I promise, she said, clearly bemused. Though I should be extracting the same promise from you, given your track record. Harry smiled, but as he continued up to the boys' dormitory, Luna's warning echoed in his mind, there's something coming. Something that will test Hermione. He would be ready when it did. Chapter 2, Threads of Fate. Harry couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his four-poster bed, Luna's visions replaying in his mind like a disturbing film. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Hermione transformed, her warm brown eyes turned cold, her compassion warped into something calculating and cruel. Worse still were the fragments Luna had shown him of how that transformation might begin, Hermione alone, seeking comfort in forbidden knowledge rather than friendship. The dormitory filled with the sound of Ron's snores and Neville's occasional murmurs, but Harry remained wide awake until dawn painted the windows with pale light. By the time his fellow Gryffindors began to stir, he'd made a decision: he would watch Hermione closely, looking for any signs that might indicate she was veering toward that dark future Luna had glimpsed. It felt like betrayal, this secret surveillance of his best friend. But wasn't it better than the alternative? If he could prevent Hermione from becoming that cold, ruthless dark lady, didn't he have an obligation to try? Breakfast in the Great Hall provided his first opportunity for observation. Harry arrived early, securing a seat with a clear view of the entrance. When Hermione appeared, her arms laden with books as usual, he studied her with new intensity. "Morning, Harry," she said, dropping into the seat across from him. "You're up early. I thought for sure you'd sleep in after being up so late." "Couldn't really sleep," Harry admitted truthfully. "Too much on my mind." Hermione buttered a piece of toast while balancing a large, ancient-looking tome against the juice pitcher. "Is it your scar? Or those dreams you mentioned?" Harry shook his head. "Nothing like that. Just, thinking about the future, I guess." "Well, that makes two of us." Hermione flipped open the massive book. "I've been researching career paths that combine magical law enforcement with international cooperation. The way different magical communities handle justice is fascinating, there's so much room for improvement." The casual statement sent a chill through Harry. Wasn't that how it began in Luna's vision? Hermione seeing flaws in the system, believing she could create something better. "What kind of improvements?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Oh, all sorts," Hermione said enthusiastically. "Did you know that in most magical communities, Veritaserum testimony isn't admissible in court? And memory extraction is considered too invasive for standard evidence collection, even though both would virtually eliminate wrongful convictions." Harry nearly choked on his pumpkin juice. Memory extraction, exactly what Dark Lady Hermione had used in Luna's vision. "Maybe there are good reasons for those limitations," he suggested carefully. "Memory charms can be modified, and Veritaserum only forces you to tell what you believe is true, not necessarily what is true." Hermione looked surprised. "That's, actually a good point, Harry. I hadn't considered the potential for manipulation." She frowned thoughtfully. "Still, there must be a way to incorporate magical methods while maintaining safeguards." "Maybe," Harry conceded, relieved that she'd acknowledged the problem so readily. "But sometimes traditional methods exist for a reason, even if they seem inefficient." Hermione's eyebrows rose slightly. "That doesn't sound like you. Usually you're the first to challenge outdated rules." Harry shrugged uncomfortably. "I guess I've been thinking about unintended consequences lately." Before Hermione could question him further, Ron dropped heavily onto the bench beside Harry, yawning widely. "Why were you two up so early?" "It's Saturday." The conversation shifted to Quidditch and homework, much to Harry's relief. But throughout breakfast, he found himself analyzing Hermione's every comment and expression, searching for hints of the potential darkness Luna had shown him. The habit continued through their morning study session in the library and afternoon visit to Hagrid's hut, until Harry felt wounds so tight he might snap. The worst part was that he could see it now, the threads that might, under the wrong circumstances, weave together into that cold, power-driven version of his friend. Hermione's frustration when others couldn't follow her logical reasoning. Her occasional ruthlessness when pursuing what she believed was right. Her tendency to take matters into her own hands when systems failed her expectations. None of these traits were evil in themselves. In fact, they were part of what made Hermione such a formidable ally and brilliant witch. But Harry now saw how they could be twisted, especially if she ever found herself isolated from the people who kept her grounded. By evening, Hermione had noticed his strange behavior. As they walked back from dinner, she pulled him aside in a quiet corridor, her expression concerned. "All right, what's going on with you today?" she demanded. "You've been watching me like I might explode at any moment." Harry winced. He'd clearly been less subtle than he'd intended. "It's nothing, really, don't," Hermione cut him off firmly. "Don't lie to me, Harry. You've been acting oddly ever since last night. Did something happen when you were out after curfew?" Harry hesitated, torn between protecting her from knowledge that might hurt her and honoring their friendship with honesty. In the end, Luna's words decided him. Hermione's brilliance is her greatest strength, but without moral anchors, without friends who challenge her, it could become something else. "Let's find somewhere private to talk," he said finally. The room of requirement provided them with a cozy space reminiscent of the Gryffindor common room, but smaller and more intimate. A fire crackled in the hearth, and two comfortable armchairs faced each other before it. Harry paced nervously while Hermione settled into one of the chairs, watching him with growing concern. "You're scaring me a bit, Harry," she said softly. "Whatever it is, just tell me." Harry took a deep breath and sat across from her. "Last night, I met with Luna Lovegood." "Luna?" Hermione's brow furrowed. "What does Luna have to do with your strange behavior?" "She showed me something," Harry said carefully. "Something about you?" Hermione's expression shifted from concern to confusion. "About me? What could Luna possibly know about me that would have you acting this way?" "It's not what she knows," Harry explained. "It's what she's seen. Luna can see alternate timelines, different versions of our lives based on different choices." Hermione's practical nature immediately asserted itself. "That's impossible. Even time-turners can only—" "I know how it sounds," Harry interrupted. "I didn't believe it either. But she proved it to me, Hermione. She showed me memories from my childhood that no one at Hogwarts could possibly know." Hermione fell silent, her brilliant mind visibly working through the implications. "Assuming what you're saying is true, and that's a significant assumption, what does this have to do with me?" Harry met her eyes directly. "Luna showed me a timeline where you become something terrible. A dark lady more powerful and dangerous than Voldemort." Hermione stared at him for several seconds, then let out a startled laugh. "That's ridiculous. Me? A dark lady?" Her laughter faded when she saw Harry's serious expression. "You can't possibly believe that." "I saw it," Harry said quietly. "I saw you using memory extraction spells on students who disappointed you. I saw you talking about a magical meritocracy and something called the Great Separation. I saw you with a throne in the Great Hall where Dumbledore's chair used to be." The color drained from Hermione's face. "This isn't funny, Harry. It's not meant to be. In that timeline, you'd done something to my memories to make me compliant. You'd separated magical children from their Muggle families. You'd created some kind of surveillance state using modified time-turners." Hermione stood abruptly, her hands trembling. "Stop it. Just stop. I would never," her voice broke. "How could you think I'm capable of those things?" "I don't," Harry said quickly, rising to face her. "Not our Hermione. Not you. But Luna showed me how it happened, how a series of choices and circumstances led you down that path." "What choices?" Hermione demanded, anger replacing her shock. "What could possibly transform me into this monster you're describing?" Harry hesitated, then decided complete honesty was the only way forward. "It started with a book, a forbidden text containing knowledge Rowena Ravenclaw had hidden. You performed some kind of ritual that gave you access to lost magical knowledge, but it changed you. And before that, you and I had a falling out. You were alone when you needed friends most." Hermione sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. When she looked up, Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "So you've been watching me all day, looking for signs I'm about to turn evil?" The blunt question made Harry flinch. "Not evil. Just, warning signs, I guess." "Warning signs," Hermione repeated flatly. "And did you find any? Does my research into magical law reform qualify? Or perhaps it was when I insisted the house elves deserve better treatment. Tell me, Harry, which of my principles mark me as a budding dark lady?" The bitter edge in her voice cut Harry deeply. "None of them." "That's not, I thought you knew me," Hermione whispered, a tear finally escaping to trail down her cheek. "I thought if anyone understood that everything I do, everything, is about making things better, fairer, it would be you." "I do know you," Harry insisted. "That's why I was so shaken by what Luna showed me. Because it was still you, Hermione. Your intelligence, your determination, your desire to fix broken systems, but twisted somehow. Corrupted. And you believe this could happen?" Hermione asked, her voice small. "You believe I could become this terrible person?" Harry hesitated too long before answering, and he saw the moment his silence wounded her as deeply as any words could have. "I see," Hermione said, rising again. "Well, thank you for the warning. I'll be sure to avoid any suspicious books or rituals. And don't worry," her voice cracked slightly, "I won't hold it against you for suspecting me of potential dark magic tendencies. After all, better safe than sorry, right?" "Hermione, please," Harry reached for her arm, but she stepped back. "I need some time to process this," she said stiffly. "I think it would be best if we didn't discuss it further tonight." Before Harry could respond, the door to the room of requirement swung open, revealing Luna Lovegood. Her protuberant silver eyes took in the scene with understanding beyond her years. "I thought I might find you both here," she said serenely. "The Raxperts led me straight to you." Hermione turned to her with uncharacteristic sharpness. "Come to show Harry more visions of my evil future." Luna tilted her head. "Not evil. Just different." She entered the room fully, allowing the door to close behind her. "I'm sorry you're upset, Hermione. I didn't show Harry those glimpses to hurt you." "Then why?" Hermione demanded. "Why show him a version of me that's everything I fight against?" "Because possibilities matter," Luna replied simply. "Because knowledge of what might be can help us shape what will be." The room shifted subtly around them, responding to Luna's presence. A third chair appeared by the fire, and a small table with 3 cups of steaming tea materialized between them. "Please sit," Luna requested gently. "Both of you. I think I need to explain more about what I see and why I showed Harry." Harry glanced at Hermione, expecting her to refuse, but after a moment's hesitation, she returned to her chair. Harry followed suit, relieved that she wasn't storming out. Luna picked up one of the teacups, inhaling the fragrant steam before taking a small sip. "These glimpses I see aren't prophecies," she began. "They're more like echoes from paths not taken. Threads in a vast tapestry that weave together in different patterns depending on the choices we make." "That's not possible," Hermione said automatically, though with less conviction than before. "Time doesn't work that way. It's linear." "Is it?" Luna asked mildly. "The Department of Mysteries has an entire room devoted to studying time. Time turners allow limited travel backward. Who's to say time isn't more complex than we understand?" Hermione frowned. "Even if these alternate timelines exist, why focus on one where I become some sort of dark witch? Surely there are countless possibilities." "There are," Luna confirmed. "I've seen timelines where Harry becomes Minister for Magic. Where Ron invents a revolutionary chess strategy that changes the game forever. Where Neville discovers a plant that cures dragonpox." She set down her teacup carefully. "But I've also seen darkness. Timelines where Harry accepts Voldemort's offer in the forest. Where Ginny never recovers from Tom Riddle's influence. Where Draco Malfoy sacrifices everything to save his family. Then why show only my dark path? Hermione persisted. Luna's silvery eyes fixed on her with surprising intensity. Because yours was the most unexpected. And because of all the dark paths I've glimpsed, yours had the most profound impact on our world. The statement hung in the air between them. Harry watched Hermione absorb this, saw her analytical mind processing the implications despite her emotional turmoil. In the timeline I showed Harry, Luna continued gently, you believe you're doing what's necessary for the greater good. Your intentions remain noble. That's what makes your path so dangerous, you never see yourself as becoming dark. You see yourself as becoming effective. Hermione's hands tightened around her untouched teacup. And you think this is something I need to guard against? This, capacity for justifying terrible things? I think it's something we all need to guard against, Luna replied. But those with the greatest gifts often face the greatest temptations. Can you show me? Hermione asked suddenly. These visions of this other, me? Luna and Harry exchanged concerned glances. It might be better if you don't, Harry began. I want to see, Hermione insisted, her voice stronger now. If this is truly a possibility for me, I deserve to witness it firsthand. Luna studied her thoughtfully. Are you certain? What you see may be difficult to reconcile with your self-image. I'm certain, Hermione said firmly. I need to understand what Harry saw that made him look at me with such suspicion. Harry winced at her word choice but couldn't deny its accuracy. Luna considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well. But I should warn you, entering these glimpses is different from a pensive. You'll experience them more directly, more emotionally. Are you prepared for that? Hermione set down her teacup and straightened her shoulders. Yes. Luna extended her hands, one to Hermione and one to Harry. Then we'll go together. Harry, your presence will help anchor Hermione during the experience. Harry took Luna's hand without hesitation, but Hermione paused before placing her fingers against Luna's palm. What will I see? The moment of divergence, Luna said softly. The point where your path could begin to change. Hermione took a deep breath, then clasped Luna's hand. The room of requirement dissolved around them, colors swirling into new shapes until they materialized in the Hogwarts library. Hermione gasped as she saw herself seated alone at a corner table. This version of her looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes and a tension in her shoulders that suggested prolonged stress. When is this? Present, Hermione whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the vision. 3 weeks from now, Luna's disembodied voice replied. After your disagreement with Ron about his copying your potions essay. They watched as Timeline Hermione flipped through a stack of books with growing frustration. There has to be something, she muttered to herself. Some precedent for what I'm seeing in the arithmetic projections. She pushed aside several texts and reached for an ancient, unmarked volume bound in dark leather. As she opened it, a slip of parchment fell out, covered in handwriting Harry recognized as Professor McGonagall's. Restricted, not for student access, Timeline Hermione read aloud. She hesitated, then glanced around the deserted library before continuing to turn the pages. Present Hermione made a small sound of distress. I wouldn't do that. If it's restricted, you would if you believed it contained crucial information, Harry said quietly. You've done it before. They watched as Timeline Hermione's expression changed from scholarly interest to fascination, then to a kind of hungry excitement as she discovered something in the text. The Ravenclaw paradigm, she whispered, tracing the page with reverent fingers. It's real. She quickly pulled out her wand and performed a complicated copying spell, transferring the contents to her own notebook. Then, with a furtive glance around, she closed the restricted book and returned it to the pile. The scene shifted. Now they stood in a girl's bathroom, not Moaning Myrtle's, but one on the 5th floor that was rarely used due to persistently drippy taps. Timeline Hermione had transformed the space, drawing elaborate symbols on the floor and arranging candles in a complex geometric pattern. In the center lay the notebook containing her copied text from the restricted book, alongside a small golden object that resembled a time turner but with additional rings and symbols. "That's a chronometric focal point," Luna explained. "A rare magical artifact that can anchor temporal energy." Present Hermione watched with horrified fascination as her counterpart double-checked the arrangements, then stepped into the center of the pattern. Timeline Hermione opened the notebook and began reading aloud in a language that sounded like Latin but contained strange, dissonant syllables that made Harry's ears ache. "Tempus revelio, sapientia manifestum," she intoned. "Per hoc sacrificium, cognitio quaeritur." The golden artifact began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with her words. As Timeline Hermione continued the incantation, thin threads of light extended from the device, wrapping around her arms and throat like luminous vines. Present Hermione shuddered. "That's blood magic," she whispered. "Those symbols on the floor, they're binding her life force to the spell." "Yes," Luna confirmed. "The Ravenclaw paradigm requires equivalent exchange. Knowledge for life energy." They watched as Timeline Hermione completed the ritual, gasping as the golden device dissolved into her palm, leaving a star-shaped scar. For a moment, her eyes glowed with the same golden light, and she swayed on her feet, looking simultaneously exhilarated and terrified. "I can see the patterns," she breathed. "The connections between magical theories, the underlying structure, it's beautiful." The bathroom scene dissolved, replaced by a rapid succession of moments, Timeline Hermione devouring restricted texts with newfound understanding, creating experimental spells in abandoned classrooms, arguing with Harry and Ron over increasingly radical ideas about magical education reform. Then they were in the headmaster's office. Timeline Hermione stood before McGonagall's desk, her posture rigid with barely contained fury. "You can't expel him," she was saying. "The evidence clearly shows Macmillan was responsible for the potion contamination, not Zabini." McGonagall looked grave. "Miss Granger, while I appreciate your concern, the disciplinary committee has reviewed the case thoroughly. Mr. Zabini's wand showed the last spell cast was the one that destabilized the cauldron. That's because someone modified his magical signature," Timeline Hermione insisted. "I've developed a method to detect tampering with prior incantato results. A method that has not been verified by any reputable magical authority," McGonagall countered gently. "I understand you believe you've made a breakthrough, but the committee cannot overturn a decision based on experimental magic." Timeline Hermione's eyes flashed with that same golden light they'd seen after the ritual. "So you'll knowingly punish an innocent student because the system is too rigid to accommodate new evidence?" "Miss Granger," McGonagall said, her voice sharpening. "I've given you considerable latitude due to your exceptional academic record, but I must insist you respect the school's procedures." "Procedures that perpetuate injustice aren't worthy of respect," Timeline Hermione replied coldly. "I thought you of all people would understand that, Professor." McGonagall's expression hardened. "That will be enough, Miss Granger. Please return to your dormitory." As Timeline Hermione turned to leave, they caught a glimpse of her face, frustration mingled with resolve, and beneath it, a dangerous determination. The vision dissolved, returning them to the room of requirement. Present Hermione yanked her hand away from Luna's, her face pale and her breathing rapid. "That wasn't me," she said shakily. "I would never perform a blood ritual, no matter what knowledge it offered." "Wouldn't you?" Luna asked, not unkindly. "If you believed it was the only way to solve a critical problem? If lives depended on it?" Hermione opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again, doubt creeping into her expression. I don't know." "That's the true danger," Luna said softly. "Not evil intentions, but good intentions pursued without limits or constraints." Harry watched emotions war across Hermione's face, denial, anger, fear, and finally, reluctant acknowledgement. She turned to him, her eyes pleading for understanding. "Do you really think I could become that person?" That I could justify using dark magic for knowledge. Harry chose his words carefully. I think you're the most principled person I know. But I also think you're willing to bend rules when you believe the cause is just enough. How self-liberation. Dumbledore's army. The time-turner to save Sirius and Buckbeak. Those were different, Hermione protested. I never hurt anyone. No, Harry agreed. But each time, you decided your judgment superseded the established rules. Usually, you were right, but what happens when that becomes your default approach? When you start believing your intellect gives you the right to make decisions for everyone else. Hermione fell silent, absorbing the uncomfortable truth in his words. Finally, she looked up at Luna. Why show us this now? What makes you think I'm approaching this, divergence point? The threads are gathering, Luna replied cryptically. I've seen multiple glimpses converging around decisions you'll soon face. Not all paths lead to darkness, in fact, most don't. But the possibility exists, and it's stronger now than it was before. Hermione wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very young and vulnerable. So what do I do? How do I make sure I don't become her? Luna's expression softened. Stay connected. When faced with difficult choices, don't isolate yourself. Remember that friendship isn't just emotional support, it's moral anchoring. And if you find a mysterious book about the Ravenclaw paradigm, Harry added with a weak attempt at humor, maybe give it a miss. A ghost of a smile flickered across Hermione's face. I think I can manage that. She hesitated, then asked, Luna, can you see which path I'm currently on? Am I heading toward that future? Luna shook her head. The threads are too tangled to predict with certainty. But knowing the possibility exists changes the equation. Knowledge of potential futures alters how we approach the present. The fire in the hearth had burned low, casting the room in soft shadows. Hermione stared into the embers, her expression troubled but thoughtful. I should go, she said eventually, rising from her chair. I need some time to process all of this. Harry stood as well. Hermione, I'm sorry I didn't tell you right away. No, she interrupted, her voice steadier now. You were right to be concerned. I don't like that you were watching me like I might turn dark at any moment, but I understand why. Luna remained seated, looking between them with her unervingly perceptive gaze. The strongest timelines are those where you face this knowledge together, she observed. Division is what creates the conditions for darkness to grow. Hermione nodded, though her expression remained guarded. Good night, Luna. Harry. After she left, Harry sank back into his chair, feeling emotionally drained. Did I do the right thing, telling her? Yes, Luna said simply. Though the manner could have been gentler. Harry ran a hand through his already messy hair. I botched it completely, didn't I? She probably thinks I don't trust her now. Trust is complex, Luna mused. Sometimes the deepest trust comes from acknowledging someone's capacity for both greatness and terrible mistakes. Do you really think she could become that dark lady you showed me? Luna's silver eyes seemed to look through him rather than at him. Everyone's path contains divergence points, Harry. Even yours. The implication wasn't lost on him. You've seen dark versions of me too, haven't you? Many, Luna confirmed. As I have of myself. The difference is in how many steps separate us from those versions, and which influences pull us back from the edge. Harry pondered this as the fire crackled softly. Should I be worried about Hermione tonight? She seemed really shaken. She needs time to reconcile what she's learned with her self-perception, Luna said. But Hermione's strength has always been her ability to integrate new information, however uncomfortable. She rose gracefully from her chair. I should return to Ravenclaw Tower. The glimpses take energy to navigate, and I find I'm quite tired. As if to emphasize her point, she swayed slightly on her feet. Harry quickly stood to steady her. Are you okay? Luna smiled dreamily. Quite all right. The veil between timelines is just a bit thinner around me tonight. Harry walked her to the door of the room of requirement. Thank you, he said quietly. For showing us. I think. I'm still not entirely sure what to do with this information. Be a friend, Luna suggested simply. The rest will follow naturally. The next morning, Harry entered the Great Hall with trepidation, unsure how Hermione would react to him after last night's revelations. He spotted her at the Gryffindor table, already surrounded by books, and approached cautiously. Morning, he ventured, sliding onto the bench across from her. Hermione looked up, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd slept as poorly as he had. Morning, Harry. Are you, okay? He asked tentatively. She set down her quill, considering the question seriously. Not entirely. I spent most of the night thinking about what Luna showed us. And I've decided that while I don't much like having my potential for darkness exposed, I'm glad to be aware of it. She met his eyes directly. Knowledge is power, even when it's uncomfortable knowledge. Harry felt a surge of relief. So you're not furious with me? I was, Hermione admitted. But then I asked myself what I would have done if Luna had shown me a timeline where you turned dark. Would I have kept it from you or told you? And I would have told you, she said simply. Because that's what friends do, they tell each other difficult truths. Harry nodded, grateful for her understanding. For what it's worth, I still believe in you completely. Luna showing me that alternate version of you doesn't change who you are now. But it could, Hermione said softly. That's what scares me, Harry. I recognize myself in that other Hermione. Her frustration with inefficient systems, her belief that knowledge should prevail over tradition, those aren't foreign impulses to me. The difference is, you balance those impulses with compassion, Harry pointed out. And you listen when people challenge you. The Dark Lady version of you had lost that balance entirely. Hermione smiled faintly. Well, I suppose I should thank you and Ron for providing that balance. Your combined influence probably keeps me from becoming a tyrannical know-it-all on a daily basis. Harry laughed, relieved by her attempt at humor. That's us, the anti-Dark Lady squad. Hermione's smile faded as she glanced down at the parchment before her. There's something else, Harry. Something I haven't told you. Harry felt a flicker of apprehension. What is it? Yesterday, before you and Luna revealed all this, I received a note from Professor Vector. She wants me to assist with a special project, advanced research combining arithmancy with temporal theory. Hermione pushed a small roll of parchment across the table to him. Read it. Harry unrolled the note and scanned the neat, precise handwriting. Miss Granger, your exceptional work in advanced arithmancy has not gone unnoticed. I believe you may be uniquely qualified to assist with a research project I am undertaking with the Department of Mysteries regarding the mathematical properties of temporal manipulation. If you are interested, please come to my office Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. This opportunity would involve access to restricted texts and theoretical concepts not typically available to students. Discretion is advised. Professor Septima Vector. Harry looked up from the note, a chill running down his spine. Temporal manipulation. That sounds exactly like what the Dark Lady version of me was experimenting with, Hermione finished for him. I know. Are you going to go? Hermione bit her lip, her internal conflict evident. Part of me wants to. It's an incredible opportunity, the kind that could open doors to a career in magical research after Hogwarts. She sighed. But after what Luna showed us, it could be the first step down that path, Harry said quietly. Or it could be something completely innocent, Hermione countered. Professor Vector is hardly luring me into dark magic. True, Harry acknowledged. But it's a strange coincidence, isn't it? Luna shows us this vision, and the very next day you get an invitation to study the exact type of magic your dark counterpart mastered. Hermione frowned thoughtfully. Luna said the threads are gathering. Maybe this is one of them. So what will you do? She squared her shoulders, a familiar determination settling over her features. I'm going to go. But I'm going to be extremely cautious. And... She hesitated, then continued with unusual vulnerability, I'd like you to come with me. Harry blinked in surprise. To the meeting with Vector. Won't that seem odd? Probably, Hermione admitted. But I don't want to face this alone. If this is truly a divergence point, I want my moral anchor there. The phrase brought a lump to Harry's throat. Of course I'll come. We'll face it together. Relief softened her expression. Thank you. And Harry? I want you to promise me something. Anything. If you ever see me starting to become like her, you'll tell me immediately. No watching from a distance, no private worrying. Just tell me directly. I promise, Harry said solemnly. And you'll listen? Hermione nodded. I'll listen. She glanced at her watch. We should head to potions. Slughorn will be insufferable if we're late. As they gathered their things, Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as they always had. Tuesday evening arrived with unsettling speed. Harry met Hermione outside the arithmancy classroom, where Professor Vector's office was located. She looked pale but determined, her school bag bulging with books as usual. Ready? He asked. Hermione nodded, though her grip on her bag betrayed her nervousness. As I'll ever be. They knocked on Professor Vector's office door precisely at 8 o'clock. A crisp "enter" invited them inside. Professor Vector looked up from her desk, surprise registering briefly at Harry's presence. Miss Granger, Mr. Potter. I don't recall extending my invitation to both of you. Harry's here at my request, Professor, Hermione said quickly. He has some experience with temporal magic that might be relevant to your project. Vector raised an elegant eyebrow. Indeed. I wasn't aware Mr. Potter had any particular interest in arithmancy or temporal theory. More practical than theoretical, Harry admitted. But I'm interested in learning more. Vector studied him for a moment, then shrugged. Very well. The project could benefit from diverse perspectives, I suppose. She rose and moved to a bookcase behind her desk, tapping a complex pattern on the spines of several volumes. The bookcase slid sideways, revealing a hidden door. Few students ever see my research workshop, Vector commented as she led them through. Consider yourselves privileged. The workshop beyond was unlike any classroom Harry had seen at Hogwarts. Instead of desks and chairs, the circular room contained workbenches arranged around a central platform where a complex magical apparatus hovered in midair. The walls were lined with bookshelves containing ancient tomes and scrolls, many secured with magical chains. Arithmetic equations floated in glowing script above one workbench, constantly shifting and recalculating. Welcome to Project Chronos, Vector said with undisguised pride. The first serious attempt to expand upon the principles of time-turner magic in over a century. Hermione moved toward the central apparatus, her eyes wide with scholarly interest. Is that a temporal anchor? Very good, Miss Granger, Vector approved. Yes, this prototype combines elements of time-turner construction with stabilizing arithmetic matrices. She gestured to the floating equations. We're attempting to overcome the 5-hour limitation inherent in traditional time-turners. Harry felt a chill of recognition. This was exactly the type of research Dark Lady Hermione had apparently mastered. He glanced at Hermione and saw her looking back at him, the same realization in her eyes. What would be the purpose of extended temporal regression? Hermione asked carefully. Vector smiled. Initially, research only. But the applications could be extraordinary. Imagine being able to observe historical events firsthand, or prevent magical disasters before they occur. Or change outcomes you don't approve of, Harry suggested, keeping his tone neutral. Vector's smile faltered slightly. That would be strictly prohibited, of course. The Unspeakables have established rigorous ethical guidelines for this research. Of course, Harry murmured. Vector turned to a workbench and lifted a thin volume bound in faded blue leather. This, Miss Granger, is why I've invited you specifically. Aristotle Rowena's Temporal Arithmancy, one of only 3 copies in existence. Hermione's breath caught. Aristotle Rowena, Rowena Ravenclaw's grandson. Indeed, Vector confirmed. He inherited his grandmother's brilliance for theoretical magic. This text contains foundations for temporal manipulation that have never been fully explored. She held out the book to Hermione. I believe you have the mind to understand it where others have failed. Harry watched as Hermione stared at the offered book, conflict clear on her face. This moment felt heavy with significance, a crossroads Luna had foreseen. What exactly would my role be in this research, Professor? Hermione asked, not yet taking the book. Initially, you would study Rowena's text and translate his theories into modern arithmetic formulations, Vector explained. Later, you might assist in calibrating the temporal anchor itself. Her expression grew more serious. I must emphasize that this project is classified by the Department of Mysteries. You would be required to sign magical confidentiality agreements. Meaning she couldn't discuss her work with anyone, Harry interjected. Not even her friends. Security is paramount with temporal research, Vector said firmly. Surely you understand that, Mr. Potter, given your own experiences with time manipulation. Hermione's hand remained suspended, neither accepting nor rejecting the offered book. Would I have access to the restricted section for supplementary research? Better than that, Vector said with a slight smile. You would have access to the Department of Mystery's own library through a secure fluke connection in this workshop. Harry saw something flicker in Hermione's eyes, excitement, ambition, the thrill of exclusive knowledge. It was a fleeting expression, but in it, he glimpsed the seed that might grow into the cold calculation of Dark Lady Hermione. Professor, Hermione said finally, this is an incredible opportunity, and I'm honored by your confidence in me. But I need some time to consider. This would be a significant commitment alongside my regular studies. Vector looked surprised, then mildly disappointed. Of course. I had hoped for your immediate enthusiasm, but I appreciate your thoughtfulness. She returned the book to the workbench. Take until Friday to decide. But remember, Miss Granger, opportunities of this caliber rarely present themselves twice. After a brief tour of the workshop and explanation of the project's goals, Vector escorted them back to her office. As they left, Harry noticed Hermione looking back at the blue leather book with undisguised longing. They walked in silence through the darkening corridors, both lost in thought. Finally, as they reached the grand staircase, Hermione spoke. It's exactly what Luna showed us, isn't it? She said quietly. The beginning of the path. Harry nodded. The temporal research, the restricted knowledge, the secrecy, it's all there. The thing is, Hermione admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, part of me still wants to do it. Is that terrible? Even knowing where it might lead? It's honest, Harry said. The project itself isn't dark magic. It's what it might lead to, the isolation and the temptation to use that knowledge for control. They reached the portrait of the fat lady, but neither gave the password immediately. What would you do? Hermione asked, turning to face him fully. If you were me? Harry considered carefully before answering. I think I'd remember what Dumbledore told me once, that it's our choices, not our abilities, that show who we truly are. You can choose to pursue knowledge without letting it consume you. You can choose to maintain your connections even when secrecy is required. But what if those choices become harder over time? What if each step makes the next dark choice easier? Then you rely on your friends to keep you grounded, Harry said simply. You promise to listen if I ever saw you heading down that path. I promise to tell you directly. We keep those promises. Hermione smiled faintly. When did you get so wise, Harry Potter? I had a good teacher, he replied with a smile of his own. A brilliant witch who's been keeping me on the right path for years. Before Hermione could respond, the fat lady cleared her throat pointedly. Are you two planning to stand there all night, or would you like to actually enter the common room? Dillagrout, Harry said, and the portrait swung open. As they climbed through the portrait hole, Hermione touched Harry's arm lightly. Thank you, she said simply. For being my anchor. Friday afternoon found Hermione, Harry, and Ron beside the lake, enjoying a rare moment of spring sunshine. Hermione had finally shared Luna's visions with Ron the previous evening, after extracting a promise that he wouldn't tease her about her dark future. To everyone's surprise, Ron had taken the information seriously, his strategic mind immediately grasping the implications of diverging timelines. So today's the day you give Vector your answer, yeah? Ron asked, skipping a stone across the lake's surface. Hermione nodded, watching the ripples spread from Ron's stone. Yes. I've made my decision. And? Harry prompted when she didn't elaborate. And I'm going to decline, she said firmly. The project is fascinating, and I have no doubt it would be an incredible learning opportunity. But the secrecy, the isolation from you both, the focus on manipulating time, it's too close to what Luna showed us. Harry felt a surge of relief, though he tried not to show it too plainly. Are you sure? It could be a great career opportunity. There will be other opportunities, Hermione said with unusual serenity. Besides, after seeing that dark version of myself, I've been thinking about what really matters to me. And it's not just knowledge for its own sake. Ron grinned. Hermione Granger turning down extra studying. Should we check her for polyjuice? She swatted his arm playfully. Very funny. I'm still planning to study temporal theory, just not in secret, and not with experimental magic involved. Speaking of Luna, Harry said, glancing toward the castle, there she is. Luna was drifting down the path from the castle, her long blonde hair gleaming in the sunlight. She moved with her usual dreamy gait, occasionally stopping to examine something invisible to everyone else. As she approached their spot by the lake, Harry noticed she looked paler than usual, with faint shadows beneath her silver eyes. Hello, she greeted them airily. The lake is particularly full of glimmering tidrates today. They're drawn to temporal disruptions, you know. Right, Ron said, exchanging amused glances with Harry. Loads of those about, I expect. Luna settled onto the grass beside them, tucking her legs beneath her. Have you made your decision, Hermione? Hermione looked startled. About Professor Vector's project? How did you know about that? The threads showed me, Luna replied as if this were perfectly obvious. It's a significant nexus point. I've decided not to participate, Hermione told her. It felt too much like taking the first step down that dark path you showed us. Luna studied her with those unervingly perceptive eyes. Interesting. In most of the glimpses where you decline, you do so out of fear. But I don't sense fear from you now. No, Hermione agreed. Not fear. Just clarity. I want my choices to be driven by my values, not by ambition or isolation. A small smile curved Luna's lips. That's good. Fear-based decisions tend to loop back to the very outcome you're trying to avoid. Ron looked puzzled. How does that work? When you run from something out of fear, you give it power over you, Luna explained. Your attention remains fixed on it, drawing you closer through your very resistance. Like a self-fulfilling prophecy, Hermione mused. Exactly like that, Luna agreed. But choosing from a place of strength and clarity creates different ripples. She gestured to the lake where the last of Ron's stone-skipping ripples were fading. See how the patterns change depending on where and how the stone enters the water. Harry watched as Luna picked up a smooth stone and sent it skipping across the lake's surface with surprising skill. Each choice creates ripples that affect everything around it, she continued. But the nature of the choice, frightened or clear, reactive or intentional, shapes those ripples. You're looking tired, Luna, Hermione observed with concern. Are these glimpses difficult for you? Luna tilted her head, considering the question. They can be. Especially lately. The threads are unusually active, converging and diverging rapidly. Because of us? Harry asked. Because of what you showed us? Partially, Luna acknowledged. Knowledge of possible futures changes how you approach choice points, which alters the threads themselves. She plucked a blade of grass and twisted it absently between her fingers. But there's something else, something larger shifting in the temporal currents. Ron rolled his eyes good-naturedly. Always a cryptic answer with you, isn't it? Luna smiled dreamily. Not cryptic. Just difficult to translate into linear thinking. Before anyone could respond, a school owl swooped down, dropping a small scroll into Hermione's lap before winging away toward the Ollery. That's odd, Hermione said, untying the ribbon. Who would be sending me an owl when I'm clearly visible from the castle? She unrolled the scroll, her expression changing from curiosity to concern as she read. What is it? Harry asked. It's from Professor McGonagall, Hermione replied, looking up with troubled eyes. She wants to see me in her office immediately regarding an issue of serious academic misconduct. What? Ron exclaimed. That's mental. You're the last person who'd do anything academically dodgy. Hermione reread the note, her brow furrowed. I can't imagine what this is about. Harry felt a prickle of unease. Do you want us to come with you? No, Hermione decided after a moment's consideration. I should handle this myself. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. She stood, brushing grass from her robes. I'll find you afterward and explain what happened. As they watched her hurry back toward the castle, Harry turned to Luna. Do you think this is connected to the timeline stuff? Another nexus point or whatever you call it? Luna's silver eyes followed Hermione's retreating figure with unusual sharpness. Yes, she said simply. A significant one. Harry and Ron exchanged worried glances. Should we go after her? Ron asked. I don't like the sound of this. No, Luna said, her voice suddenly clear and authoritative. This is a moment she needs to face alone initially. But. She hesitated, her expression troubled, be ready. She may need you both very soon. Hermione approached the gargoyle guarding the headmistress's office with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. In 6 years at Hogwarts, she had never been accused of academic misconduct. The very suggestion was both offensive and bewildering. Tartan biscuit, she told the gargoyle, which sprang aside to reveal the spiral staircase. As she ascended, Hermione mentally reviewed her recent assignments and exams, searching for anything that might have been misconstrued as cheating or plagiarism. Nothing came to mind. The door to McGonagall's office was ajar. Hermione knocked lightly and entered when bid to do so. To her surprise, Professor McGonagall was not alone. Professor Vector stood beside the headmistress's desk, her expression grave. Miss Granger, McGonagall said, her Scottish accent more pronounced than usual, a sign Hermione recognized as stress or displeasure. Please sit down. Hermione took the offered chair, her apprehension growing. Your note mentioned academic misconduct, Professor. I assure you there must be some mistake. McGonagall's lips thinned. I dearly wish that were the case, Miss Granger. However, Professor Vector has brought a very disturbing matter to my attention. She nodded to the arithmancy professor. Vector placed a familiar blue leather book on the desk, the same rare volume she had offered to Hermione in her workshop. This morning, I discovered unauthorized copying charms had been applied to this text. Someone attempted to duplicate restricted temporal theory that is classified by the Department of Mysteries. Hermione stared at the book in shock. And you think I did this? Professor, I declined your invitation to join the project. I haven't touched that book. Yet the magical signature on the copying charm is unmistakably yours, Miss Granger, Vector said coldly. A simple priori incantatum revealed it clearly. That's impossible, Hermione protested. I've been nowhere near your workshop since Tuesday evening, and I certainly didn't cast any copying spells while I was there. McGonagall raised her wand. Priori magica signatura, she intoned, pointing at the book. A shimmer of blue light rose from the pages, forming into a ghostly representation of a wand movement that Hermione recognized with horror as her own distinctive casting style. Worse, the signature glowed with her magical aura-specific pattern, something as unique to her as fingerprints were to Muggles. I don't understand, Hermione stammered, genuine confusion and distress evident in her voice. That's my signature, but I didn't do this. I swear it. McGonagall studied her intently. Miss Granger, you have earned my trust many times over during your years at Hogwarts. However, the evidence here is very difficult to ignore. Someone must have forged my magical signature, Hermione suggested desperately. Is that possible, Professor? Highly improbable, Vector replied. Magical signatures are nearly impossible to falsify convincingly. The few documented cases required months of preparation and intimate knowledge of the subject's magical patterns. Then someone used Polyjuice Potion to impersonate me, Hermione countered. Or the Imperious Curse, or, enough, Miss Granger, McGonagall interrupted, though not unkindly. We have considered these possibilities. The workshop is warded against unauthorized entry, including those using Polyjuice. As for the Imperious Curse, surely you would remember being placed under such influence. Hermione felt tears of frustration threatening. Professor, please. I've never cheated, never plagiarized, never stolen academic material. Why would I start now, especially after declining to join the project officially? McGonagall sighed heavily. That is indeed the question, Miss Granger. Why would a student of your caliber risk her academic future this way? Hermione's mind raced. Something about this situation felt wrong, manipulated, even. A sudden, chilling thought occurred to her. Professor, when exactly was this copying charm allegedly performed? Vector consulted a small notebook. Yesterday evening, between 7 and 9 o'clock. I was with Harry and Ron in the common room during that entire time, Hermione said with growing confidence. We were working on Slughorn's antidote essay. Dozens of Gryffindors saw us. McGonagall and Vector exchanged glances. That can be verified, McGonagall acknowledged. However, it doesn't explain how your magical signature appeared on the copying charm. No, Hermione admitted. But it proves I couldn't have cast it. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. Miss Granger, until we resolve this mystery, I must ask for your wand. The use of restricted temporal magic is a serious breach of both school rules and ministry regulations. Hermione felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her. Her wand was an extension of herself, a physical manifestation of her identity as a witch. Surrendering it felt like losing a limb. For how long? She whispered. Until this matter is resolved, McGonagall replied firmly. I assure you we will investigate thoroughly. With trembling fingers, Hermione withdrew her wand and placed it on the desk. The vine would seem to shine reproachfully in the office's light. In the meantime, McGonagall continued, you are restricted from the library's restricted section and Professor Vector's classroom floor. Should evidence of your innocence emerge, these restrictions will naturally be lifted immediately. Hermione nodded numbly. May I go now, Professor? Yes, Miss Granger. We will speak again when there are developments. As Hermione rose to leave, Vector spoke again, her voice cooler than before. I must say I'm deeply disappointed, Miss Granger. I believed you understood the seriousness of temporal research. If you wanted to study the material, you had only to accept my invitation. Something in Vector's tone made Hermione pause. There was an undercurrent there, almost as if. I did understand the seriousness, Hermione replied carefully. That's precisely why I declined. Vector's eyes narrowed slightly. A decision you appeared to regret almost immediately. No, Hermione said firmly. A decision I made with complete clarity. As she left the office and descended the spiral staircase, Hermione's mind whirled with implications. The timing was too perfect, the trap too neatly laid. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to frame her, using magic that should have been nearly impossible to falsify. But who? And why? The vision Luna had shown them flashed through her mind, the dark lady she might become, obsessed with temporal magic and control. Was this situation somehow connected? Was someone trying to push her toward that fate by cutting her off from the library and her friends, by making her feel persecuted and misunderstood? Or was she becoming paranoid, seeing dark conspiracies where simple explanation might suffice? As she emerged into the corridor, Hermione was surprised to find Harry, Ron, and Luna waiting for her. One look at her face told them everything they needed to know. What happened? Harry asked immediately. Hermione glanced around to ensure they were alone, then explained the accusation in a low, urgent voice. Ron's expression grew thunderous while Harry's eyes darkened with suspicion. It's a setup, Ron declared when she finished. Someone's framing you. But who could forge a magical signature that convincingly? Harry wondered. That's supposed to be nearly impossible. Luna, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. Not impossible for someone with knowledge of the Ravenclaw paradigm. The three friends stared at her. What do you mean? Hermione asked. The ritual you saw your other self perform in my glimpse, Luna explained, her dreamy voice taking on unusual urgency. One of its applications is the ability to manipulate magical signatures, to see and replicate the patterns that make each witch or wizard's magic unique. Hermione felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying that someone performed that ritual? That someone else has accessed the Ravenclaw paradigm? Luna nodded, her silver eyes troubled. The threads show me someone walking the path you declined, Hermione. Someone who wants you to join them on it. Harry's expression hardened. Vector. It has to be. The way she pressured you to join the project, her disappointment when you declined. No, Hermione said slowly, thinking it through. That doesn't make sense. Why would she frame me for stealing knowledge she'd already offered me freely? To discredit you, Ron suggested. Get you desperate, isolated, need her help to clear your name. Then she offers you a deal, join her project in exchange for dropping the accusations. That's actually quite plausible, Hermione admitted, looking at Ron with newfound appreciation. Or to push you toward a specific divergence point, Luna added softly. The threads I've glimpsed show your darkness beginning with a sense of injustice, of being punished for seeking knowledge that should be freely available. Harry ran a hand through his hair in frustration. We need proof. If Vector or someone else is trying to manipulate Hermione onto this dark path, we need to expose them. Without my wand, I'm at a serious disadvantage, Hermione said bitterly. McGonagall confiscated it until this is resolved. Then we'll be your wands, Harry declared, his green eyes fierce with loyalty. All of us. The threads are converging, Luna murmured, her gaze turning distant. A nexus point approaches. Luna, can you see anything more specific? Hermione asked urgently. Any detail that might help us understand what's happening? Luna closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Tonight. Vector's workshop. The temporal anchor will be activated for the first time. She focused on Hermione with unusual intensity. You'll be there, though not by choice. And you'll face the same choice your dark self once made. What choice? Harry demanded. Luna shook her head, the strange light fading from her eyes. I can't see that clearly. Only that it involves sacrifice, knowledge for power, or power for friendship. Hermione squared her shoulders, a determined expression replacing her earlier distress. Then we'll be prepared. Whatever this manipulation is, whoever is behind it, they've underestimated one critical factor. What's that? Ron asked. Hermione smiled grimly. They've shown me the path they want me to take. Thanks to Luna, I know exactly where it leads. And I have no intention of setting foot on it. As the four friends huddled together, planning their response to this strange conspiracy, none of them noticed the small golden beetle resting on a nearby window ledge, its antennae quivering as if listening intently before flying away toward Professor Vector's tower. Chapter 3, Choosing Light. Twilight descended on Hogwarts, painting the castle in shades of purple and gold. Hermione sat alone in the Gryffindor common room, surrounded by open textbooks she wasn't reading. Her hand kept drifting to her pocket, seeking the reassuring presence of her wand, only to find emptiness. Without her Vinewood companion, she felt vulnerable in a way that transcended the practical limitations of being wandless. It was as if part of her identity had been stripped away. News of her alleged misconduct had spread through the school with predictable speed. Even now, she could feel curious glances from other Gryffindors, some sympathetic, others doubtful. The weight of suspicion pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. Hey, Harry said softly, dropping into the chair across from her. How are you holding up? Hermione attempted a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. About as well as you'd expect for someone framed for magical theft and stripped of their wand. Harry leaned forward, his voice low. Ron's watching the entrance to Vector's office under my invisibility cloak. Luna's positioned herself near the arithmancy corridor, pretending to hunt for some imaginary creature. And you drew the short straw, babysitting the wandless criminal? No, Harry said firmly. I'm exactly where I want to be. He hesitated, then added, something about this whole situation feels wrong, Hermione. It's too calculated. Designed to isolate me, Hermione agreed, glancing around at their housemates who were giving them a wide berth. Cut me off from resources and support. Make me feel victimized and misunderstood. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Exactly the conditions Luna described as the starting point for my darker path. Which means you won't be facing this alone, Harry said, his green eyes intense behind his glasses. Whatever happens tonight, we're with you. A flutter of silver light near the window caught their attention. A small, translucent hair bounded through the glass and straight to Harry, where it hovered before him. Luna's Patronus, Hermione whispered. The silvery hair spoke in Luna's dreamy voice, movement in the workshop. Vector and a visitor. Something's beginning. The Patronus dissolved into wisps of silver mist. Harry and Hermione exchanged glances. A visitor? Hermione questioned. Who would? She was interrupted by the portrait hole swinging open. Professor McGonagall entered, her expression grave, her tartan robe swishing as she crossed directly to where they sat. Miss Granger, she said without preamble, your presence is required in Professor Vector's workshop immediately. Hermione's heart skipped a beat. May I ask why, Professor? Professor Vector believes she may have discovered evidence pertinent to the investigation of the unauthorized copying. McGonagall's lips were pressed into a thin line. Mr. Potter, this does not concern you. Actually, Professor, Harry said, standing, I'd like to accompany Hermione. As moral support. McGonagall looked as though she might refuse, but something in Harry's determined stance gave her pause. Very well. But you will remain silent and observe only. Is that clear? Yes, Professor, Harry agreed readily. As they followed McGonagall through the corridors, Hermione caught Harry's eye and mouthed Ron. Harry discreetly patted his pocket, where Hermione saw the telltale shape of his enchanted DA galleon. Good, he'd be able to alert Ron to their movement. The journey to Vector's workshop seemed to take both forever and no time at all. When they arrived, Hermione was surprised to see not only Professor Vector waiting for them, but also a tall, thin wizard in elegant navy robes. His silver-streaked hair was cut in a precise style, and his goatee was trimmed to geometric perfection. He radiated the particular blend of authority and condescension that Hermione associated with high-ranking ministry officials. "Ah, Miss Granger," Vector said coolly. "Thank you for joining us. This is Kronos Templeton, head of temporal research for the Department of Mysteries." The wizard inclined his head slightly. "Miss Granger. I've heard a great deal about your academic prowess." Something in his tone made the hair on the back of Hermione's neck stand up. There was a familiarity there, as if he knew her better than a stranger should. "May I ask why I've been summoned, Professor?" Hermione asked, keeping her voice steady despite the growing unease in her stomach. Vector gestured to the temporal anchor hovering at the center of the workshop. It was active now, its nested rings spinning at different speeds, a soft golden glow emanating from the core. "Mr. Templeton has graciously come to assist with the first full activation of our prototype. As the student whose magical signature was found on the unauthorized copying, your presence was deemed prudent." "For what purpose?" McGonagall asked sharply, clearly not having been fully informed of the reason for this summons. "Temporal resonance, Minerva," Templeton explained smoothly. "When unauthorized temporal magic occurs, it leaves traces that can be detected during a full temporal field activation. Miss Granger's presence will allow us to determine if she was indeed responsible for the breach." Hermione frowned. "I've never heard of such a detection method." "Unsurprising," Templeton replied with a thin smile. "The technique is classified level 9 within the department." Harry, who had been silent as promised, moved slightly closer to Hermione. She felt a small object press into her hand, the DA coin. A quick glance showed a message engraved around the edge, "Luna says trap. Ron in position." "I see," Hermione said, stalling for time. "And how does this detection process work?" Vector moved to a control panel beside the anchor. "Simply stand within the field radius," she indicated a circle marked on the floor around the device. "The temporal energies will interact with any residual traces of temporal manipulation in your magical aura." "And if I refuse?" Hermione asked. McGonagall looked startled by the question, but Templeton merely raised an eyebrow. "That would be taken as a strong indication of guilt, Miss Granger. Surely an innocent student has nothing to fear from a simple diagnostic procedure." The trap was elegant in its simplicity, Hermione realized. Refuse, and confirm their accusations. Comply, and step directly into whatever they had planned. She caught Harry's eye briefly and saw understanding there. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. "Very well," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Let's proceed." McGonagall touched her arm as she moved forward. "Miss Granger, are you certain?" "It's all right, Professor," Hermione assured her. "I have nothing to hide." She stepped into the marked circle, feeling the hair on her arms rise as she entered the device's energy field. The spinning ring seemed to accelerate, the golden glow intensifying slightly. "Excellent," Templeton murmured, approaching a secondary control panel. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Minerva, I need to calibrate the detection parameters." McGonagall nodded and stepped back, watching the proceedings with visible concern. Vector moved to join Templeton at the controls, their heads bent together as they adjusted various settings. "Notice anything strange, Professor McGonagall?" Harry asked suddenly, breaking his promise of silence. McGonagall turned to him with a frown. "Mr. Potter, you were instructed to. Why would the head of temporal research come personally for what should be a routine student disciplinary matter?" Harry continued. "And why would Professor Vector not mention his visit until we arrived?" Vector's head snapped up. "Potter, be silent or leave." But Harry's questions had the intended effect. McGonagall's eyes narrowed as she considered the situation with new suspicion. Indeed, Mr. Templeton, your presence here seems rather extraordinary for a case of student misconduct. Templeton straightened, his manner cooling noticeably. The department takes temporal security very seriously, headmistress. Particularly when it involves artifacts of the nature described in the copied text. What artifacts? McGonagall demanded. Septima, what exactly was in that book? Vector hesitated, her fingers still poised over the control panel. Advanced temporal theory, Minerva. Nothing that would concern the Ravenclaw paradigm, Hermione interrupted from within the circle. Isn't that right, Mr. Templeton? That's what this is really about. Templeton's expression remained impassive, but Hermione noticed his hand drift toward his wand pocket. I'm not familiar with that terminology, Miss Granger. Really? That's strange, considering you've used it yourself. Hermione kept her voice level, though her heart was pounding. The ritual that allows access to hidden knowledge, and the ability to manipulate magical signatures. A flash of something crossed Templeton's face, surprise, quickly masked by calculation. Interesting theory. Perhaps you know more about restricted temporal magic than you've admitted. McGonagall looked between them with growing alarm. What is the meaning of this? Septima, I demand an explanation. Vector's face had gone pale. Kronos, perhaps we should postpone, too late for that, Templeton said softly. With a movement so swift it was nearly invisible, he drew his wand and pointed it at the temporal anchor. Tempus acceleratum. The device's spinning rings blurred into solid circles of light, the golden glow at its core intensifying to a painful brightness. Hermione felt a strange pulling sensation, as if something was trying to extract her very essence. Hermione! Harry shouted, lunging forward only to be thrown back by an invisible barrier that had formed around the circle. Potter, stay back. McGonagall commanded, drawing her own wand. Finite incantatem. The spell splashed harmlessly against the barrier. Within the circle, Hermione felt a strange doubling sensation, as if she were in two places at once. The workshop around her seemed to flicker, alternating between its current state and another version where the walls were lined with different instruments, where the temporal anchor was larger, more complex. What are you doing to her? Harry demanded, helping McGonagall to her feet after her own attempt to break through the barrier had failed. Templeton's smile was cold and satisfied. Merely facilitating a necessary transition. Miss Granger possesses a rare temporal resonance, a natural affinity for the paradigm. We've been monitoring her for years. We? McGonagall asked sharply. Those who understand the true potential of temporal manipulation, Templeton replied. The Department of Mysteries has barely scratched the surface. But Miss Granger, or rather, the version of her that embraces her potential, will revolutionize our understanding. The realization hit Hermione with stunning clarity. You're trying to force me onto the dark path Luna showed us. You want me to become her, the Dark Lady. Such dramatic terminology, Templeton said dismissively. We prefer, temporal sovereign. And yes, we've seen what you become, what you achieve. The magical meritocracy. The great separation. The perfection of wizarding society through precise temporal management. How? Hermione gasped, fighting against the pulling sensation that threatened to tear her apart. How could you know about that timeline? Templeton tapped his temple, where Hermione now noticed a faint star-shaped scar identical to the one Luna had shown her on Dark Lady Hermione's palm. The paradigm allows glimpses across timelines, Miss Granger. Less comprehensive than your friend Lovegood's natural ability, but sufficient to identify optimal futures. Outside the barrier, Harry had moved to Vector, grabbing her arm. Shut it down. Whatever you've done, undo it now. Vector shook her head, her expression a mixture of fear and resignation. I can't. The process has progressed too far. McGonagall's voice cut through the chaos, steel in every syllable. Septima Vector, as headmistress of Hogwarts School, I order you to terminate this experiment immediately. Templeton laughed softly. Your authority is irrelevant here, Minerva. We stand at a nexus point, a moment where timelines converge and diverge. The Hermione Granger who leaves this circle will be the one who embraces her destiny. Inside the barrier, Hermione felt as if she were being pulled in two directions, one toward the person she knew herself to be, the other toward something vast and terrible and seductively powerful. Knowledge flooded her mind, equations, theorems, ritual frameworks, all the forbidden secrets of the Ravenclaw paradigm pouring into her consciousness. She could see it all now, how temporal manipulation could be used to perfect society, to eliminate uncertainty and waste. She saw herself standing before the Wisengamot, instituting the magical meritocracy. Saw herself creating a system where magical children were identified and separated from Muggle families before accidental magic could expose them to fear and persecution. Saw a world where knowledge and ability determined status, where efficiency replaced the chaotic messiness of democratic governance. And she saw the price, her humanity diminished with each calculated decision, her connections to others severed one by one until she stood alone, perfect and terrible in her isolation. Hermione. Harry's voice penetrated the visions. Whatever you're seeing, it's not you. Remember who you are. She blinked, struggling to focus through the flood of knowledge. Harry was pressed against the barrier, his green eyes fierce with determination and fear. Beyond him, she glimpsed movement, a flicker of displacement that suggested Ron beneath the invisibility cloak, positioning himself behind Templeton. The process is accelerating, Templeton observed with clinical interest. Soon her consciousness will align with the optimal timeline. You mean you're forcing her to become someone else? Harry shouted. That's not choice, it's coercion. An unfortunate necessity, Templeton replied coldly. In most timelines, Miss Granger requires certain, traumatic catalysts to embrace her potential. We're merely expediting the process. Inside the barrier, Hermione fought to maintain her sense of self as knowledge continued to pour into her mind. The Ravenclaw paradigm was beautiful in its complexity, elegant in its applications. With it, she could reshape reality according to optimal patterns. She could eliminate suffering through precise intervention. She could, Hermione Jean Granger. Luna's voice cut through the chaos, clear as a bell. Hermione turned to see her standing just beyond Harry, her silver eyes glowing with an unearthly light. Remember the choice. Luna called. Not power for knowledge, but knowledge for connection. The words triggered something in Hermione's rapidly transforming consciousness, a counterpoint to the seductive flow of knowledge. What good was perfect understanding if it separated her from everyone she loved? What value had a perfected society if it required the sacrifice of human messiness, human choice, human connection? I won't become her, Hermione said, her voice gaining strength as her resolve crystallized. I choose differently. Templeton's expression hardened. You don't understand what you're rejecting, girl. The power to reshape history itself is meaningless without people to share it with, Hermione finished. She turned to face the temporal anchor directly, drawing on the very knowledge flowing into her mind. And I think I understand more than you realize. With a sudden, decisive movement, Hermione thrust her hands toward the device. Without a wand, she should have been powerless, but the temporal field itself had connected her to the raw magic of the paradigm. Golden light flowed from her fingertips, entering the spinning rings and causing them to shudder. Stop her! Templeton shouted to Vector. She's disrupting the alignment. Vector moved toward the controls, but was intercepted by McGonagall, whose wand was now pointed directly at her former colleague's heart. I think not, Septima. At that moment, Ron made his move. Throwing off the invisibility cloak, he launched himself at Templeton, tackling the older wizard before he could cast a spell. They crashed into a workbench, sending equipment clattering to the floor. Hermione, meanwhile, continued channeling energy into the anchor, using her newfound understanding of the Ravenclaw paradigm against itself. The barrier around her flickered as the device's stability deteriorated. Harry, she called. When the barrier falls, destroy the anchor's central component. With what? Harry called back. We don't have your wand expertise. Despite everything, Hermione laughed. Harry Potter, when have you ever needed expertise to break things spectacularly? Harry grinned in acknowledgement. As the barrier flickered again, more substantially this time, he positioned himself for a clear run at the device. On the other side of the workshop, Ron was wrestling with Templeton, trying to keep the wizard's wand hand pinned. Little help here, he grunted as Templeton nearly broke free. Luna moved with surprising speed, snatching up a heavy tome from a nearby shelf and bringing it down on Templeton's head with impressive force. Knowledge is power, she remarked serenely as the wizard slumped, unconscious. The barrier around Hermione collapsed with a sound like shattering glass. She stumbled forward, suddenly free of the temporal field's pull. Now, Harry, she shouted. Harry didn't hesitate. He charged straight at the temporal anchor, shoulder lowered like a Quidditch player executing a particularly aggressive block. He collided with the device at full speed, sending it crashing from its pedestal. The central component, a crystal sphere about the size of a snitch, broke free and rolled across the floor. Reducto. McGonagall called, her spell hitting the sphere with pinpoint accuracy. It exploded in a shower of crystalline dust and golden light. A shockwave of temporal energy blasted through the workshop, knocking everyone off their feet. For one disorienting moment, Hermione felt as if she were simultaneously experiencing multiple versions of the same instant, versions where she succeeded, failed, never entered the circle at all, became the Dark Lady willingly, before reality snapped back into a single coherent timeline. She found herself lying on the workshop floor, her head pounding but her mind blissfully her own again. The flood of Ravenclaw paradigm knowledge had receded, leaving only fragments, enough to understand what had nearly happened, but not enough to tempt her toward that dark path. Harry was at her side instantly, helping her sit up. Hermione? Are you you? Eloquent as always, she replied with a weak smile. Yes, I'm me. The only me there is now, I think. Ron approached, dragging a semi-conscious Templeton with him. This one's got some explaining to do. Trying to turn our Hermione into some dark temporal witch, mental, that's what it is. McGonagall had Vector secured with magical restraints. Indeed, Mr. Weasley. I believe the Department of Magical Law Enforcement will be most interested in this unauthorized experiment. She turned to Hermione with concern. Miss Granger, how are you feeling? Like I've had someone else's lifetime of knowledge crammed into my head and then mostly removed, Hermione answered honestly. But I'm myself. Luna knelt beside her, studying her with those perceptive silver eyes. The threads have settled, she confirmed. The nexus point is resolved. What happened exactly? Harry asked. What was Templeton trying to do? Hermione rubbed her temples, organizing the fragments of knowledge that remained. He was using the temporal anchor to force a convergence, to make me align with the timeline where I become the temporal sovereign. She couldn't bring herself to say Dark Lady. He's part of a group within the Department of Mysteries who've accessed the Ravenclaw paradigm. They can see glimpses of alternate timelines, like Luna, but less clearly. And they saw one where you became this powerful temporal witch, Ron concluded. And decided to make it happen, Harry added grimly. Why you specifically? McGonagall asked. Luna answered before Hermione could. Because Hermione has a rare temporal resonance. In timelines where the paradigm is rediscovered, she's often the catalyst, for better or worse. It's my combination of magical ability, analytical thinking, and... Hermione hesitated. Determination to improve broken systems, Harry finished for her. All your greatest strengths, twisted toward control rather than liberation. McGonagall surveyed the destroyed workshop with a mixture of anger and sadness. Septima, how could you participate in this? Using a student this way. Vector looked away, unable to meet her colleague's eyes. The knowledge, Minerva. You can't imagine what the paradigm reveals. Temporal causality, magical resonance patterns, secrets Rowena herself deemed too powerful to preserve openly. And that didn't warn you? McGonagall asked sharply. It blinded me, Vector admitted quietly. Just as they said it would. Templeton, now fully conscious, laughed softly despite his restrained position. You've merely delayed the inevitable, Miss Granger. The temporal sovereign exists in the most powerful timeline branches. Sooner or later, that potential will manifest. No, Hermione said with quiet certainty. You fundamentally misunderstood something about timelines and choice. She stood, drawing strength from Harry's supportive hand on her arm. What defines us isn't our potential or our capabilities. It's the choices we make, especially when those choices are difficult. Pretty philosophy, Templeton sneered. But you can't deny what you felt in that circle, the power, the clarity, the purpose. I don't deny it, Hermione acknowledged. I felt all of it. And I chose differently. McGonagall conjured her Patronus, sending it racing away with a message to the Auror office. This discussion can continue after Mr. Templeton and Professor Vector are in custody. Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, please assist me in securing them until the authorities arrive. As Harry and Ron moved to help McGonagall, Luna touched Hermione's arm gently. There's something you should see, she said softly. One more glimpse, if you're willing. Hermione hesitated, then nodded. After everything that had happened, one more vision couldn't hurt. She took Luna's offered hand, bracing herself for the now familiar sensation of sliding between realities. The workshop dissolved around them, replaced by a cozy sitting room Hermione didn't recognize. Sunlight streamed through mullioned windows, illuminating bookshelves that lined every wall. A woman sat at a desk by the window, her brown hair streaked with dignified silver, her face lined with the wisdom of years rather than the hardness of power. Is that? Hermione began. You, Luna confirmed. Approximately 40 years from now, in the timeline we're currently following. They watched as the older Hermione made notes in a journal, occasionally consulting one of several open books on her desk. The door to the sitting room opened, and a tall man with unruly gray-streaked black hair entered, carrying a tea tray. Still working on the temporal ethics paper, older Harry asked, setting down the tray. Older Hermione smiled up at him, her eyes crinkling warmly. Just finishing. The International Confederation needs clear guidelines for chronometric research after that incident in Peru. If anyone can create ethical frameworks for time magic, it's you, older Harry said, pouring tea with practiced ease. After all, you're the witch who turned down ultimate power to keep her friends. Older Hermione laughed. Ancient history now. Not to me, older Harry replied, his expression growing serious. I've always thought that was your finest moment, choosing connection over control. A knock at the door interrupted them. Older Harry called, "Come in." A young witch of about 17 entered, her red-brown hair wild and curly, her expression eager. "Mom, Dad, Luna's here. She says the minister approved my proposal for supervised research into the Ravenclaw archives." "That's wonderful, Rose," older Hermione said proudly. "But remember, knowledge serves connection, not control," the girl recited, rolling her eyes good-naturedly. "I know, Mum. You've only told me 1,000 times. And I'll tell you 1,000 more," older Hermione replied with a smile. "Some lessons are worth repeating." The scene began to fade around them, dissolving back into the damaged workshop at Hogwarts. Hermione found herself gripping Luna's hand tightly, tears pricking her eyes. "That's really possible," she whispered. "That future?" Luna smiled, her silver eyes gentle. "More than possible now. The threads of that timeline are strengthening with every choice you make." Hermione wiped away a tear, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over her. "Thank you for showing me. It helps to see where the path leads," Luna said simply. "Both the dark and the light." Across the workshop, McGonagall was supervising as Harry and Ron secured the prisoners. Templeton was watching Hermione with narrowed eyes, as if trying to solve a particularly challenging puzzle. "I don't understand," he said finally. "You experienced the paradigm's knowledge. You felt its power. How could you reject that?" Hermione approached him, careful to stay beyond arm's reach but wanting him to see the certainty in her face. "Because knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. Power without compassion is destructive. And perfection without humanity isn't worth the cost." "Platitudes," Templeton scoffed. "Truth," Hermione corrected quietly. "I saw what I would become if I followed your path, efficient, brilliant, and utterly alone. That's not power. That's tragedy." Before Templeton could respond, the door burst open as 3 Aurors entered, led by Kingsley Shacklebolt. His deep voice filled the room as he took in the scene. "Minerva? Your Patronus mentioned unauthorized temporal experimentation and assault on a student." As McGonagall explained the situation, Harry moved to stand beside Hermione. "You okay?" "I will be," she said honestly. "There's still Ravenclaw paradigm knowledge in my head, fragments that didn't disappear when the anchor was destroyed. I'll need to be careful with it." "You will be," Harry said with absolute confidence. "If there's anyone I trust to handle dangerous knowledge responsibly, it's you." Hermione smiled gratefully. "Even after seeing what I could become?" "Especially after seeing that," Harry replied. "Because now you've seen it too, and you've chosen differently." He paused, then added, "By the way, McGonagall has your wand. She found it in Vector's office drawer." As if on cue, the headmistress approached, holding out Hermione's vinewood wand. "I believe this belongs to you, Miss Granger. I cannot adequately express my regret for doubting you, however briefly." Hermione took her wand, feeling the familiar warmth spread through her fingers as it recognized its true owner. "Thank you, Professor. You couldn't have known." "Nevertheless," McGonagall said firmly, "your character should have been evidence enough." She glanced at the Aurors, who were now placing magical restraints on Templeton and Vector. "I suspect there will be a rather lengthy investigation into this matter. The 3 of you, she amended, including Luna, will need to provide complete statements." "Of course, Professor," Hermione agreed. "But that can wait until tomorrow," McGonagall continued, her stern expression softening slightly. "For now, I suggest you return to your common room and rest. This has been an extraordinary evening." As they left the workshop, Ron gave a low whistle. "Mental. Absolutely mental. Time conspiracies, Dark Lady Hermione, secret temporal rituals, and to think I was worried about Quidditch tryouts this week." "Priorities, Ronald," Hermione said with a small smile. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, processing the events of the evening. Luna drifted alongside them, occasionally pausing to examine something invisible to the others. "Luna," Hermione said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," Luna replied dreamily. "Though I might have already answered it in another timeline. These glimpses you see, will they continue? Will you keep seeing alternate versions of our lives?" Luna considered the question. "I think so. The ability seems to be growing stronger, not weaker. But it's different now." "Different how?" "Before, I was a passive observer of the threads," Luna explained. "Now I understand I can help guide them. Not control them, that leads to the same darkness Templeton embraced, but illuminate the choice points, like lighting a path through fog." Harry looked thoughtful. "Is that dangerous for you? Carrying all those possible realities in your head?" "Sometimes," Luna admitted. "But it helps to share the burden." She smiled at them. "Friends make excellent anchors, I've found." They reached the point where they would separate, Luna to Ravenclaw Tower, the others to Gryffindor. Before they parted, Hermione impulsively hugged the blonde witch. "Thank you," she whispered. "For showing us both the darkness and the light. Luna returned the embrace with surprising strength. "That's what friends do," she said simply. As Luna drifted away, Ron yawned widely. "I don't know about you two, but I'm exhausted. Being a hero is tiring work." "You were brilliant, Ron," Hermione said warmly. "Tackling Templeton like that, without magic." Ron's ears reddened with pleasure. "Well, figured he wouldn't expect the direct approach, wizard like that." They gave the password to the fat lady and entered the Gryffindor common room, finding it nearly empty due to the late hour. A few embers still glowed in the fireplace, casting a warm orange glow across the familiar space. "I should probably write down what I remember of the paradigm," Hermione said, settling into an armchair. "While it's still fresh in my mind. Not the dangerous parts, but the theory. It could be valuable if properly regulated." Harry and Ron exchanged knowing glances. "Some things never change," Ron said with affectionate exasperation. "Nearly forced to become a dark lady, and she's thinking about homework." "Not homework," Hermione corrected, though she smiled. "Responsible knowledge management." "Right, that makes it sound much more fun," Ron teased. He stretched and headed toward the boys' staircase. "I'm for bed." "Coming, Harry." "In a bit," Harry replied. After Ron had gone, he sat in the chair opposite Hermione. "You're really okay?" Hermione considered the question seriously. "I'm processing. It's not every day you almost become an alternate version of yourself from a different timeline." "No, that's usually my department, the weird magical experiences," Harry joked. Hermione laughed softly. "I suppose I was due." Her expression grew more serious. "The hardest part is knowing that version of me is still out there, in some parallel reality. She's still separating magical children from their families, still using memory extraction on people who disappoint her." "But she's not you," Harry said firmly. "Just like the Harry who accepted Voldemort's offer in the forest isn't me. They made different choices at critical moments." Hermione nodded, drawing comfort from his words. "Luna showed me another possibility," she confided. "A future where I use my knowledge to create ethical frameworks for temporal research instead of exploiting it for control." "That sounds more like you," Harry said with a smile. "It was a good future, Harry," she continued, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "A happy one." Harry seemed to catch her meaning, his own cheeks reddening slightly. "Well, that's good to know." An awkward but not unpleasant silence fell between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Finally, Hermione stood. "I should get some sleep. It's been quite a day." Harry rose as well. "Hermione, he hesitated, then continued, "I just want you to know that I never doubted you. Even when Luna first showed me that dark version of you, I knew it wasn't who you truly are." "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you know." She hesitated, then added, "What Luna said about friends being anchors, she was right. You kept me grounded today, Harry. You and Ron and Luna. Without you, I might have been lost." "You did the same for me when I was connected to Voldemort's mind," Harry reminded her. "That's what we do, keep each other from falling into darkness." Impulsively, Hermione hugged him. Harry returned the embrace without hesitation, holding her tightly as if to reassure himself that she was truly safe, truly herself. "Good night, Harry," she whispered as they separated. "Good night, Hermione." As she climbed the stairs to the girls' dormitory, Hermione felt a profound sense of gratitude. The knowledge fragments from the Ravenclaw paradigm still lingered in her mind, and probably always would, a reminder of paths not taken and the power of choice. Luna had given them an extraordinary gift, the ability to see not just what they might become, but how their choices shaped those possibilities. The Dark Lady timeline hadn't been erased from existence. Somewhere in the vast web of realities, that version of Hermione still pursued her cold vision of magical perfection. But here, in this timeline, Hermione had chosen differently. Knowledge for connection, not control. Friends as anchors, not subjects. Love as strength, not weakness. As she drifted towards sleep, Hermione thought about the future Luna had shown her, the one with Harry, with their daughter Rose, with work that mattered and ethics that remained intact. It wasn't guaranteed, she knew. The threads of time were too complex for absolute certainty. But it was possible. More than possible. It was a future worth choosing, one day at a time. Luna Lovegood stood at her dormitory window, gazing at the stars that sparkled above Hogwarts. To most observers, they appeared fixed and unchanging, but Luna could see the subtle shifts, not just in their physical movement, but in the threads of possibility that connected them to the earth below. The confrontation in Vector's workshop had resolved a major nexus point, collapsing countless potential timelines into a narrower, more defined stream of possibilities. Many dark outcomes had been averted, while others had gained strength and definition. Luna's ability to see these alternate realities had begun as a confusing jumble of glimpses following her 16th birthday. At first, she'd thought them to be particularly vivid daydreams or perhaps the influence of the Raxperts her father had always warned her about. But over time, she'd learned to navigate the visions, to distinguish between mere possibilities and critical divergence points. What had happened with Hermione tonight was one of the latter, a moment where the entire fabric of their future hung in the balance. Luna had seen dozens of variations of that confrontation, most ending with Hermione embracing the Ravenclaw paradigm and beginning her transformation into the temporal sovereign. The fact that she had chosen differently, had rejected power for connection, had shifted the pattern of thread significantly. Luna traced a finger along the windowpane, following invisible lines only she could see. In sharing her visions with Harry and Hermione, she had taken a risk. Knowledge of possible futures could paralyze with indecision or become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it could also illuminate, guide, and warn. Her mother had possessed a similar gift, though she hadn't lived long enough to fully understand it. Luna remembered how Pandora Lovegood would sometimes stare into space, murmuring about the paths not taken and threads that might yet be woven. It was only after Luna's own ability manifested that she understood what her mother had been seeing. A movement in the grounds below caught Luna's attention. A figure was walking alone by the lake, Hermione, unable to sleep despite the late hour. Luna watched as Harry emerged from the castle a few minutes later, clearly having noticed Hermione's absence from Gryffindor Tower. He approached her, and even from a distance, Luna could see the care in his movements, the way his hand tentatively reached for Hermione's when he reached her side. Luna smiled. That particular thread was strengthening nicely. She turned away from the window, her gaze falling on a small journal on her bedside table. Inside, she had begun documenting the most significant glimpses she experienced, creating a record of possibilities that might prove valuable in navigating future choice points. Luna hadn't yet told her friends everything about her ability, how it was growing stronger, how she sometimes found herself physically present in these alternate realities rather than merely observing them. There would be time for that later, when they had all recovered from the current crisis. For now, it was enough that they had averted one dark future. There would be others, of course. The threads of time never stopped weaving their complex patterns. But Luna took comfort in what she had learned tonight. When friends stood together at the critical moments, even the darkest possibilities could be transformed by the simple, powerful choice to value connection over control. After all, as her mother had once told her, what made a life worth living wasn't the paths you could have taken, but the companions who walked beside you on the one you chose. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.